Imagine waking up tired after sleeping. You open your eyes, see messages, demands, delayed tasks, and the day already feels heavy before it even begins. Many people call this adult life, but sometimes it is something deeper. Burnout does not arrive all at once. It enters slowly, disguised as responsibility, ambition, discipline, and necessity. The first sign of burnout is exhaustion that does not improve with ordinary rest. It is not that normal tiredness after a full day. It is a deeper fatigue, as if the battery never charged completely. The person sleeps, but wakes up heavy, takes a weekend to rest, but on Monday feels as if they had not stopped. And this creates a very strange feeling. Rest stops seeming like rest and becomes only a short pause before returning to pressure. The problem is that many people try to solve this exhaustion only by sleeping more, drinking coffee, distracting themselves, or promising that they will organize themselves better. But when the wear is chronic, small pauses may even relieve for a few hours, but they do not solve the cause. It is like trying to dry the floor while the faucet remains open. You can wipe the cloth 1,000 times, but the water keeps coming back. And this is where burnout begins to confuse the person. They think, but I rested, why am I still tired? Then comes guilt. They start calling themselves lazy, weak, unmotivated, or ungrateful, when in reality the body may be saying something much deeper. You're not only tired, you've been overloaded for too long. And if this first sign already made you think about your own life, leave a like and subscribe to the channel, because the next signs may explain why so many people keep functioning on the outside while breaking down on the inside. The second sign is the loss of pleasure in things that once had meaning. This can begin at work, but many times it overflows into other areas. The person no longer feels enthusiasm for projects that once seemed important. That task that gave pride now seems empty. The achievement that before would bring happiness now generates only momentary relief. It is not exactly sadness all the time. It is more similar to an emotional anesthesia. This is a curious and frightening detail. In burnout, the person can continue producing, but they begin losing the ability to feel satisfaction. They finish a task and do not celebrate. They receive praise and do not believe it. They hit a goal and only think about the next demand. It is as if the brain learned that nothing is enough because there is always one more delivery, one more urgency, one more expectation. Over time, this creates a dangerous relationship with one's own performance. The person begins to live only to put out fires. They no longer work to build something, learn something, or develop themselves. They work only to not be demanded from, not disappoint, not be late, not fail. And when life becomes a sequence of threats, even the good things begin to lose color. The third sign is cynicism. This point is very important because many people do not notice it. The person does not simply wake up saying, I have burnout. They begin by saying things like, nothing here is good. No one values anything. There is no use trying. Everyone only demands. I do not care anymore. In the beginning, this seems only like venting, but over time it can become emotional defense. Cynicism in burnout does not arise because the person became bad or cold. Many times, it arises because they got tired of caring without having any return. When someone dedicates themselves too much for too long and feels that nothing changes, the mind can create a layer of protection. If I do not care, it hurts less. The problem is that this protection also distances the person from the meaning of what they do. It is as if the brain said, since this environment hurts me, I'm going to disconnect from it. Except that this disconnection does not choose only the bad parts. It can also erase interest, empathy, creativity, and pride in one's own work. The person begins to function on automatic mode. They answer, deliver, participate, but emotionally they have already left there. The fourth sign is the drop in productivity, even when the person works more. This is one of the cruelest paradoxes of burnout. The person spends more hours trying to handle everything, but performs less. They open the computer, keep looking at the screen, start a task, stop, come back, get distracted, feel guilt, try to speed up, make mistakes, correct them, get irritated, and at the end of the day feel that they ran a lot and went nowhere. This happens because productivity does not depend only on time. It depends on mental energy, focus, clarity, and recovery. When someone is exhausted, the brain needs to spend more strength to do simple tasks. Things that before took 20 minutes begin to take an hour. Small decisions seem enormous. Answering a message becomes a weight. Starting a task feels like crossing an invisible wall. And then another dangerous cycle is born. The person notices that they are performing less, so they try to compensate by working more. They work more, rest less, become more exhausted, perform even less. Instead of getting out of the hole, they dig deeper. And the more they make effort in the wrong way, the more they reinforce the feeling of failure. The fifth sign is irritability. In burnout, patience begins to decrease. Small things irritate in a disproportionate way. A badly written email, an unnecessary meeting, a repeated question, a delay, a notification, a noise. Everything seems to invade an internal space that is already full. The person feels that they no longer have margin. This happens because an overloaded mind loses flexibility. When you are rested, you can deal better with unexpected events. But when you are at the limit, any detail seems like the final drop. And the most painful thing is that this irritation can affect precisely people who are not guilty of the problem. Family, friends, close colleagues, partners. The person notices themselves answering in a dry way, avoiding conversations, wanting to be alone, and afterwards feels guilt. Except that, instead of understanding that this may be a sign of exhaustion, they many times conclude that they are becoming a worse person. And this guilt increases the emotional weight even more. The sixth sign is social distancing. In the beginning, it seems only like lack of time. The person says they cannot go out, that they're very busy, that they need to solve some things, that later they will arrange it. But the later never arrives. Little by little, they begin to avoid contact, not because they do not like people, but because talking also requires energy. Burnout can transform even affectionate relationships into tasks. Answering a message from a friend seems difficult. Taking part in a meeting seems tiring. Explaining how you are seems impossible. So the person closes themselves off. And the more they close themselves off, the less support they receive. The less support they receive, the more isolated they feel. And the more isolated they feel, the heavier it becomes to face the routine. This is a very important point. Isolation is not only a consequence of burnout, it can also feed burnout. Being heard, welcomed, and understood helps the mind regulate stress. When the person loses this contact, they're alone with their own thoughts, and exhaustion begins to seem like a reality with no way out. The seventh sign is the feeling of incompetence. Even capable, intelligent, and experienced people can begin to feel that they cannot handle anything. They look at their own work and see only failures. They forget everything they have already done well. Any small mistake becomes proof that they are failing. Any demand becomes confirmation that they are not enough. This is very common in burnout because the exhausted mind loses perspective. It begins to interpret everything through lenses of threat. Instead of thinking this task is difficult, the person thinks, I am incapable. Instead of thinking I need help, they think, I should manage alone. Instead of thinking my environment is heavy, they think the problem is me. And this confusion is dangerous because it prevents the person from attacking the real cause. If they believe that the problem is only lack of willpower, they will try to pressure themselves more. If they believe that the problem is incompetence, they will try to prove value by working even more. But if the problem is chronic excess, lack of control, lack of support, or unfair workload, more internal pressure can make everything worse. The eighth sign is the body beginning to protest. Many people imagine that burnout is only mental, but the body usually participates in this story. Headaches, muscle tension, sleep problems, changes in appetite, stomach discomfort, feeling of tightness, constant physical tiredness may appear. It is as if the body began to send signs that the mind insisted on ignoring. The most curious thing is that some people only stop when the body forces them. While it was only sadness, irritation, or discouragement, they continued. But when pain, strong insomnia, or a sharp drop in energy appears, they realize that something is wrong. The problem is that waiting for the body to scream can cost dearly. The body keeps the account of stress. Even when you try to seem normal, it knows. Even when you say everything is fine, it registers poorly slept nights, accumulated tension, unregulated eating, excess alertness, lack of pause. And at some point, it may charge the bill. The ninth sign is the inability to switch off. The person leaves work, but work does not leave them. They're taking a shower and thinking about a task. They're eating and thinking about a deadline. They're trying to sleep and remembering a message. They are with the family, but their head is in a meeting tomorrow. The body is at home, but the mind continues in the workday. This may be one of the most modern signs of burnout. In the past, work had clearer limits for many people. Today, messages arrive at any time, notifications invade rest, and the mind gets used to living in a state of constant availability. The person does not work only when they are working. They work mentally all the time. And there is a cruel detail. When the person cannot switch off, rest loses quality. Even if they're lying down, the brain continues solving problems. Even if they're watching a movie, part of the attention is stuck on pending issues. Even if they are in silence, inside there's a meeting happening. And when rest does not recover, the next day begins with less energy. The 10th sign is when the person begins to normalize suffering. This is perhaps the most dangerous point of all, because there comes a phase in which the person stops being scared by their own state. They get used to waking up tired. They get used to living irritated. They get used to not feeling pleasure. They get used to working at the limit. They get used to saying that is just how it is. But it should not be like this. Being an adult should not mean living permanently exhausted. Having responsibility should not mean losing your own health. Being dedicated should not mean disappearing inside demands. And being strong should not mean enduring everything in silence until breaking. Burnout feeds precisely on this normalization. It grows when the culture around the person treats exhaustion like a medal. When sleeping little becomes a sign of effort. When being always busy becomes a symbol of importance. When saying no seems like lack of commitment. When resting seems like guilt. Little by little, the person learns that their own limit is an enemy. And then they begin to cross this limit every day. But here is an important turn. Burnout is not simply an individual problem. Of course, personal habits matter. Sleeping better, organizing pauses, asking for help, taking care of the body, and establishing limits can help a lot. But burnout also has a relationship with environment. Excessive workload, lack of control, lack of recognition, conflicts, injustice, constant pressure, and absence of support can create a perfect ground for exhaustion. That is why it is no use telling a person in burnout only be more positive or take a weekend to rest. This may even sound cruel, because many times they are not suffering because of lack of gratitude. They are suffering because the structure of their life has turned into a machine of energy consumption. And when the cause continues active, recovery becomes much more difficult. Think of a person who works a lot, receives little autonomy, is demanded from all the time, has no recognition, takes problems home, sleeps badly, and still blames themselves for not performing as before. Now imagine someone saying to them, "You just need to relax." It seems simple, but it is not. Relaxing does not solve a routine that continues crushing the person every day. An important curiosity is that burnout can affect very committed people. Sometimes, precisely those who care the most are those who wear themselves out the most. Responsible, perfectionist, empathetic, ambitious, or very dedicated people may have difficulty noticing the moment to stop. They get used to delivering more, enduring more, solving more, taking on more. And the environment learns to expect this from them. In the beginning, being reliable seems like a virtue. And it really is. But when the person becomes the one who always accepts everything, always solves everything, always holds everything, they can become the support point of an unbalanced system. The problem is not being dedicated. The problem is when dedication becomes self-abandonment. Another curiosity is that burnout often does not begin with hatred for work. It can begin with love. The person likes what they do, wants to grow, wants to deliver well, wants to be recognized. They get involved, make effort, accept challenges. But if this involvement does not come accompanied by limits, recovery, and support, what was passion can turn into weight. It is like a flame. In the beginning, it illuminates. Then, if there is no care, it consumes. And burnout is exactly this image. The person burns for so long that they begin to run out of fuel. On the outside, it still seems like light. Inside, it is already turning into ash. And how to begin getting out of this? The first step is to stop treating signs as weakness. Constant tiredness is information. Irritability is information. Loss of pleasure is information. Lack of focus is information. Distancing is information. The body and the mind are trying to communicate that something needs to change. The second step is to observe the cause, not only the symptom. Ask, what is draining the most energy? Is it excess tasks? Lack of control? Fear of saying no? Toxic environment? Lack of recognition? Conflicts? Financial pressure? Perfectionism? Lack of real rest? Sometimes, the person tries to solve everything at the same time and gets lost. But when they identify the main factors, they manage to begin with some concrete point. The third step is to recover limits. And limit is not rudeness. Limit is maintenance. A cell phone needs to charge. A car needs inspection. A machine needs to cool down. But many people treat their own body as if it were infinite equipment, except that no one is infinite. In learning to say, I cannot now, I need a deadline, this does not fit my routine, I need help, can be a form of survival. The fourth step is to seek support. Talking with someone trustworthy, seeking professional guidance, talking with a psychologist, a doctor, or someone qualified can make a difference, especially when the symptoms are intense, persistent, or affecting daily life. Burnout should not be treated as drama or nonsense. When something begins to harm sleep, health, relationships, work, and the will to live, it deserves serious attention. And perhaps the greatest reflection is this. Many people do not realize that they're trying to win a problem of energy by using more effort. They are exhausted and try to heal themselves by demanding more from themselves. They are overloaded and try to save themselves by working more. They are emotionally drained and try to solve everything alone. But sometimes the solution is not to accelerate. Sometimes the solution begins when the person finally admits that they cannot continue in the same way. Burnout is not simply the end of strength. It could be the sign that the way you are living, working, or demanding from yourself needs to be reviewed. And this does not mean giving up on your goals. It means stopping destroying yourself trying to reach them. Because there is an enormous difference between discipline and self-abandonment. Discipline builds. Self-abandonment consumes. Discipline organizes life. Self-abandonment transforms life into an endless demand. Discipline respects recovery. Self-abandonment calls rest laziness. And perhaps many people are calling discipline what, in truth, has already become punishment. In the end, the most important question is not only are you tired? The question is, can you still recognize yourself in the life you are leading? Do you still feel that there is space for you? Or has everything turned into obligation? Do you work to live better? Or do you live only to continue working? Are you growing or only resisting? Burnout is frightening because it does not steal everything at once. It steals little by little. It steals your energy, then your pleasure, then your patience, then your confidence, then your presence. And when you notice, you are there, functioning, but without feeling whole. But realizing this can also be the beginning of a change. Because what was normalized can be questioned. What was ignored can be cared for. What seemed like weakness can be understood as a limit. And perhaps the first act of courage is not enduring more. Perhaps it is finally admitting, I need to change something before I lose myself for good. If this video made you think of someone, or even of yourself, leave the like to support the channel, subscribe to follow the next contents, and tell me in the comments, Which of these signs do you think people ignore the most in daily life?